What do you know at this early hour about whether the vote will actually take place today?
Well, Sarah, the special committee is going to be here today. They're going to hold, or at least open up, a meeting of shareholders, and very shortly after that, probably shut it down and delay the vote until a later date, probably a week or maybe 10 days. But the reason that they're doing this is because numerically, Michael Dell and Silver Lake look like they're going to lose this vote right now. There have been enough shareholders who have voted no already, because remember, you could vote electronically. And so what the special committee hopes by adjourning, what they hope to do is force Michael Dell and Silver Lake to reconsider in the face of all of these protests from shareholders, maybe bump their bid. But what will likely happen is that Michael Dell and Silver Lake come out with and tell the special committee, look, guys, this is our best and final offer. Take it or leave it. And that is going to be the moment where shareholders are really going to have to decide yes or no. And they can change their vote from no to yes.
Okay, let's go to Cambridge, Massachusetts. Joshua Lerner, who's seen deal after deal after deal and actually studied them. Professor, bring in some common sense here. What would the board of directors and those disgruntled shareholders, what would they actually like to see Michael Dell do?
Well, I think that on the one hand, this is a classic company which is ripe for a leveraged buyout, right? It's got a sort of inherently a really good core, but it's been buffeted by the winds of fortune in a really ugly way. And this is a kind of situation we've seen again and again where a buyout group has been able to come in and create value for everybody as a result.
I agree with that.
At the same time,
well, I agree with that, Professor, but why aren't we seeing a true LBO? Did they set the price too low?
Well, I think when it comes to these kind of companies, this isn't the kind of smokestack, metal-bending business where it's pretty easy to see what the cash flows are going to be for the next 5 or 10 years. Things are so changing here that coming up with a valuation is really tough. Totally. And it's the kind of situation you can look at and say the glass is half empty or the glass is half full. You know, maybe we should be comparing this to the $18 a share that it was trading at 15 months ago, or we should be comparing it to the, the $10 or $12 a share that it was trading a few months ago. Figuring out what the right valuation here is really challenging, and it's not surprising that this has turned into a knockdown, drag-out fight about what the proper valuation ought to be.
Well, that is really the backstory on the valuation. Christina, back to you on the play-by-play. So if they delay the vote and it doesn't happen today, then what? Do we hear a higher bid from Michael Dell and Silver Lake? Do we hear from Carl Icahn?
Look, Carl Icahn wants this deal to go, wants this vote to go through today because he wants an up or down say on whether shareholders agree on that $13.65. And obviously, some shareholders that are in his camp right now could possibly change their vote if there is a bump. So there's a lot of risk on the table for Carl Icahn, and it seems to be that he really does want to take this company over, and he's telling shareholders, don't focus on the short-term drop, don't focus on the short-term volatility. Long-term, there is value here. The company's done $15 billion in acquisitions, and it's just beginning to see the fruits of those acquisitions.
So we got the academics here. We got Christina on the ground in Austin, Texas. Josh Green with us in New York. What I see there on the graphic, and for those of you on radio, this is key, are the names Yachman and T. Rowe Price. These people are hugely respected in my world. These are big names, and they're saying no to Michael Dell.
And the question I'd want to know is what happens to the share price if there is a vote and it fails?
Well, what would you say? What's your report?
I'd expect it to fall, but I'd be interested to know what Christina thinks about how far the price goes.
Well, Professor Lerner, let's go to you first. If this vote goes through in favor of Carl Icahn and we move this soap opera down the road, is this a $10 stock?
Well, I think that a lot of it comes to how credible the Icahn offer really is, and really thinking through, it's this classic bird in the hand versus one in the bush, saying, is this alternative really something that can be financed? What are the implications in terms of the leverage that would be taken on? There are clearly some big uncertainties there, and that would drive what would happen to the stock price.
Well, Christina, I want to know what happens with Michael Dell. Does he walk away? I mean, what recourse does he have at this point if it doesn't go through?
If he doesn't go through, he has to have a very hard discussion with Silver Lake as to how they could potentially increase their bid. Again, they could call the shareholders bluff. They could basically say, look, this is our best and final. We're gonna stand pat. You're going to watch this, the share price drop further, and then the risk is on you guys. He could. That's his leverage here. You know, Carl Icahn is saying, look what happened to this company when Michael Dell took the reins back in 2008. Look at the share price. It's gone down dramatically. Why would you let this guy who has done a series of expensive acquisitions, expensive buybacks, basically take the reins of the company that he thinks is undervalued clearly? Otherwise, he wouldn't be doing the deal, is what Carl Icahn would say.
Okay, Christina, there's the game set up. Professor Lerner, you teach game theory at Harvard Business School. When you teach the course, how does this end? It's not a prisoner's dilemma. It's an offshoot of that. How does this game end?
Well, I would be very surprised if we don't ultimately see a buyout going through at some price. And in particular, I think both the the sort of credibility that Silver Lake brings to the table and the the fundamental proposition. How we get there is a little murky, but I would still predict that at the end of the day we're likely to see some sort of buyout transaction.